Hi.
Hi.
We're back.
Yeah.
This is
Single Ladies.
Married Women.
Hi. Welcome back to the show. Thank you to everyone who's been listening for your feedback. Today we are super excited because we have two phenomenal guests and they're men, which is fabulous.
Yeah, so we're going to get some of the other side today.
Very excited. So we're here. Let me introduce our two guests. Damian.
Muziani.
Yes, he is an actor, host, spokesperson, radio sportscaster, and he is our married gentleman here today.
Hi, ladies.
Yeah.
How are you?
And then we've
So
got,
far, so good.
we've got Kyle Saoud. Did I say that correctly?
You did?
He is our single gentleman, newly in a relationship. I just want to say to an awesome friend of mine who I
Spoiler
absolutely
alert.
love. Yeah, spoiler alert. I had to do it. He is 31, cybersecurity consultant. Like I said, he's not really available, ladies, so don't get too excited. And originally from Georgia, has lived here since 2005. Say hi, Kyle.
Hello. Sorry, as you may have noticed, I have lost my accent after a couple years, but yeah, I'm happy to be here.
I hear a little southern twang.
Did you work on that accent, or
A
did
little
it
bit
just
of both.
happen?
A little bit of both. You know, the unfortunate reality is that when you come up here and you have a pretty thick Southern accent, people start to assume you're stupid after a little while, and so I had to kind of drop somewhat consciously, somewhat subconsciously. So,
And when you go back home, does it pop back out?
all I have to do is talk to my mother, and it comes back out. So I mean, it really does. Yeah.
Can I hear a little?
Oh, maybe when we go on, if I had bourbon instead of coffee, it would come right back out.
Next time.
I have to say, because I'm from Long Island, and when I go back to Long Island or I see relatives, all of a sudden I'm talking with all those consonants, and it happens automatically.
Can I interject? Kyle, when you go home and you have a little bit of the New York accent now, do the people at home think you're smarter?
No, they get really annoyed with me, like, oh, you changed on us, you're a Yankee now.
Yankee go home.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it turns
I'm
into.
sorry, I'm stepping out. Stepping out.
I love it. That's awesome. All right, so we've got the gentleman in the house today, and we're really excited because we've been sharing about our opinions, and we've had some ladies on as guests, and we really wanted to get the other side of it. So, as you said, Kyle is on his taxes single, but in a new relationship, and Damian is married, and let's start off with some questions and discussion. Monica.
Oh, she always throws it to me for the
Yes.
questions. Well, Damian, you told me you've been married about 5.5 years?
5.5 years, yes.
How'd you meet your wife?
I met my wife in a dinner theater production
Okay.
called Tony and Tina's Wedding.
I know that.
Do you know it?
Yes, I do.
Intimately?
Enough about it.
Does anyone?
So it's for those at home who've never heard of it or saw it. I mean, it was a very long-running show in New York, off Broadway.
It's one of the first interactive.
It is. It's like you're showing up at an actual wedding, and each the same thing goes wrong each show. It's a scripted show, but there is some interplay with the audience. However, it's very Italian American biased, I suppose. The kind of jokes that went over a lot easier maybe 20 years ago that now I don't know if the audience would have the same type of reaction. So we met doing that.
Awesome. And but you did tell me about that. So let's embellish a little bit more. What role were you playing? What role was she playing? Because she's an actor, yes?
Yes, she's an actress. Okay, so Tony and Tina are the bride and groom, or groom and bride, thank you. And the person who marries them is Father Mark. I was the priest. I played Father Mark.
Okay, great.
My wife played, how does this work? Tony's father is divorced and dating a stripper now, and owns a strip club where she's the big star. And my wife played the stripper.
She portrayed an exotic dancer.
And the way the wedding goes is the big joke with the priest is they tell people at the tables, don't get the priest drunk. He when he gets drunk he goes crazy. So the priest goes around and meets everybody, and everyone's purposely trying to give him alcohol, to play along with it.
Right.
And so by the end of the night, the priest is loaded. He's telling people confessions that he heard. He's just completely off the reservation, and the stripper ends up giving him a lap dance on the dance floor.
So
that's how you met your wife.
Love at first tip.
Is there such thing as love at first sight, and was it love at first sight with your wife?
I'll say that it was deep intrigue with me at first sight. Mm-hmm. I can't speak for her, but I can say that it was months. I knew her for months before we actually started dating.
And
Did you have to win her over, you think?
I think I still am. Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And what was it that intrigued you about her?
When you're saying at first sight, when you see someone at first sight, obviously you have to go by how beautiful they are, something like that. You can't say, as soon as I saw her, I knew she liked football. You can't
of course.
gauge that. So of course it was her beauty. But we really, in talking with her, I found that we had a lot of things in common, and we had a shared view of, I guess, the world in the acting community and also just in general.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome.
great.
Thank you for sharing that. Now,
Sure.
Kyle, you are recently involved, like I said, with someone fabulous who I love. But you were single before that. How long were you single before you met your current girlfriend, and what was that like, et cetera, et cetera?
I would say between a year and a half. I was single and roaming the streets of New York, and it was interesting. I mean, it's definitely not the first time I've been single in my life, so. Yeah, it's always a different experience because it's happened to me in different ages in my life. So being single at 30 in New York is it's a lot of fun, actually, in a lot of ways. You learn a lot about yourself, learn a lot about other people.
Right.
You do a lot of the online things, which are great. You meet some really cool people, and you meet some interesting folks as well. So I would say it's probably a very, very good learning experience for anybody who's dating or even thinking about it.
Right.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. I mean, I met people who you become friends with or may not. So,
is that how you met your girlfriend online?
Yes.
What site? Just out of curiosity.
That was Tinder, actually.
Oh, okay. I've never been on a dating site, so I have. But I have 2 sons, and one of them's about your age, so he tells me a little bit about Tinder and Plenty of Fish. Is that another one?
Yes, that's another one.
I've heard of that one. I never used that one.
Never used that one.
For me, just if we're going full disclosure, it was either Tinder or Bumble was the other one.
Bumble.
So how does that work?
Swipe left, swipe right. I want to know when you saw her too.
It works. That's pretty much it. I mean, that's the premise. You swipe right or you swipe left, and you keep it going.
Is it mutual? Like you both have to swipe the same direction?
Yes.
Okay.
You both, in order for it to show up as a like, you both had to swipe the same direction, and then you can strike up a conversation from there, at least on Tinder. Bumble's different because the girl has to strike up a conversation first.
Okay.
So you swiping, where were you when you swiped her, right? And tell me about it. Were you hanging out yeah, whatever, let me just look down at my phone? Or were you at work? Well, you don't have to say we were at work. Tell us about that moment.
Definitely not at work. Because that's a good way to lose 45 minutes of your life. Just going through it.
Right.
Yeah, there's no way to hide that in a cubicle either. So, I mean, it's really a certain level of professionalism.
It's a true professional.
And when the thing is, what you have to do is you have to turn it off when you're in the workplace, your location settings, because next thing you know, you're you show up on your colleague's thing, sure enough, and you're maybe you just mix that over.
Professional. So tell me about that.
Man, full disclosure, I don't necessarily remember the love at first swipe, to be completely honest. But I do remember the conversation. Going forward, we talked for a little while before New Year's, not very long, and then I had gotten very, very sick, not hungover for New Year's. I had gotten a stomach bug that was going around at the time, and then started talking to her again. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it wasn't shortly thereafter that I was like, oh, this girl's really cool. After a day or so, and the conversation continued to go. I always. It's kind of a corny analogy, but it is an analogy that I use as conversations like ping pong games.
Right.
Ping pong. So sometimes you get in a conversation with somebody, especially online, where you hit the ping pong on the other side and it kind of dribbles off the table. You know what I mean? It's okay, well, this conversation isn't going anywhere. Right. So this conversation continued to go and has for months on end. So
that's awesome. Yeah.
Very good. So you've been dating since around New Year's?
I'll tell you right around there. Absolutely. I mean, we went on our first date, and then I guess I call it a continuation of it because I woke up the next morning. I'm like, okay, well, spent a couple hours together. Ended up with wine spilled on me, and and
you still have to drive her home.
No. I took a subway. Well, I Ubered back because I was stumbling, but I wanted to see her again as soon as I woke up in the morning. So. Yeah, swim.
That's a nice feeling, right?
It
you
is
wake
nice.
up after meeting somebody and go, I want to see them again.
Absolutely. Even hungover, I was like, oh, let's go get brunch. 1, because I need something greasy, and 2, I really want to see you. So.
Okay. So you didn't have any of those rules? I hear these rules don't call for 2 weeks or 3 days or 6 hours and 47 minutes.
43 minutes. But, no, I don't believe in that. I mean, really, if you like somebody, you go for it, and you don't hold anything back on it. So. I really,
awesome.
Yeah, I believe in that.
How did you keep the conversation going when you met your wife those months leading up to starting to date?
Monica, our situation was a little different than Kyle and Jess's because we were acting together 3 times a week
For how long?
in an interactive dinner theater show. So she had already been a part of the production for, I guess, about a year and a half. When I joined, it was maybe 4 months before we actually started dating, but we would
see.
still be rehearsing together and working stuff out and, making small talk. So it wasn't a question of, will I ever see them again, or, did I actually swipe right, or did I forget and swipe left? We were still going to see each other. So it was easier in that context.
Yeah, in that sense, yeah.
I think it's really cool that we have like 2 different ways of meeting. The good old-fashioned way, bumping into your wife or working with her, and through association, and then also online, and everything seems to be going great, which is awesome. So, Damian, so you got married, and how did life change for you? How long were you single before you got married, and how did life change for you after you got married?
Let's see.
Other than the legal paperwork and all the fun stuff.
We dated for 4 years, got engaged, and then it was a year and a half, 2 years later. So we were dating for 6 years.
Wow.
And now we've been married. It'll be 6 years in October.
Yay! Got it. So,
August, October.
Same thing. So then, what was life now? It's like, oh, now I'm married. Like, what were the adjustments that you had to make?
I would love to say that you go through a learning curve or a process. I can't say that it hasn't been anything but a piece of cake. It really has.
Awesome.
The thing is, we lived together for several years beforehand, so our inside joke that we told friends and families are we're making it legal, but it really didn't change much. We bought a house, and we're making decisions on furnishings and things like that. I mean, we're sharing duties that we might not have had before, but the flow has always been very, very smooth.
Awesome. Now, do you have single friends, male friends, and did any of that change your relationship with them when you got married, or is like whatever?
Maybe to an extent. I've seen that. Obviously, when a guy gets married, it's almost a tug of war. I always feel like it's a little bit of a tug of war. The wife and then his single friends, and it's kind of like and. The friends aren't going to win that. Like guys, if you're out, I don't know how many male listeners that you have, but if you have female listeners, you can just say, hey, listen to this guy. Just give up your friends. Just give them up.
All of them?
Yeah, just give them up.
Some.
Well, the thing is if you give them up all willingly, I think your wife will then meet you a little halfway and then let you be able to see them. I have a poker night with my guy friends once a month.
Great, awesome.
That's one night a month, and I usually play horribly and I get knocked out in the first hour and come home. So it's not even a long night, that's plenty for me. I'm fine, the way things are.
That's awesome. Kyle, you have single friends that are single, you're married friends. Tell us what it's like.
A little bit of
you're
both.
Happy in a happy relationship,
Absolutely, a little bit of both. Plenty. I mean, I'm from Georgia, so like everybody got married at 18. So I mean, that's kind of what happened for down there. But I have plenty of friends up here who are married as well. Married, kids, the whole kind of gambit into a handful of single friends at this point. So I think, oddly enough, what do you think? I was the last of the single, I think, for the people who you're really, really close with.
Right, your circle.
And no exception to one, but so yeah, that just to mirror that dynamic does change from the single guy perspective. You definitely see a little bit less of them, but you just you have to have a little more structured in a communication and almost put a Outlook calendar to invite together to make sure you really plan this out.
Yeah, that was kind of my question. Yeah. Why can't you see them, even married? Why can't you see them? I don't understand the having to give up your friends part.
I think money comes into it a little bit. I have a group of friends, and they do like an away football game where you take 2 or 3 days, you fly out, you watch your favorite team play somewhere else. Uh-huh. I used to do that, when I was single, but it's just not. It's partially not feasible, and it's kind of just not fair. I try when these things come up. I think, how would I feel if my wife said, "Oh, well, we're having a girls' weekend in Vegas. Bye." I would be like, "All right."
So it's a priority.
Priorities,
thing.
yes. I was just thinking that too. Yeah.
Maybe you don't want to do it as much, or there are other things you'd rather do, or if the two of you were to take a trip. I just want to see where the shift came from, so that it's fair to both of you.
The priority is I think about if one of these trips comes up, would I be happier just going with my wife or going with the guys? I'm sorry, I'd be happier with my wife.
Yeah.
It's luckily she likes the same sports teams that I do. Otherwise, maybe it might not be as fun.
Well, that's the compatibility, and that's
it,
kind of what I was trying to find out. Is it a bone of contention, or is it something that you somehow came to an agreement to, spoken or unspoken, of how the priorities shift if you
it never
married?
gets that serious, Monica. It's something that it kind of just goes away. It peters out. It doesn't. It becomes less of an issue as time goes on.
That's pretty cool. That's great. So wait, Kyle, so you're from Georgia. You said everyone got married at a relatively young age. Were you getting pressured by your family, even if it's lightly? Because we love the family because, hey, everybody got married at 18 or 19, and now you're 30 in the big city. Did you get any calls, or when you visited, they go, what's going on, Kyle?
I definitely got a little pressure early on, or for a while. My mother is, wanted me to get married. I think it's not necessarily more about the, maybe not wanting me to get married, but wanting me to find that person.
Right.
And I get that, obviously. I mean, it's a great place to be. Although both sides of my family have been divorced numerous times, so it's like and I told her from early on, I'd rather wait and get it right than rush and get it wrong.
Right.
So that has definitely been my motto on that, because I've seen it the other way plenty of times. And so yeah, definitely got some pressure. My grandmother in particular, I mean, she's the sweetest, but I'm like, thank God my brother had some early. I'm like, perfect. I'm out of the way for a little bit.
Too. I did that. My sister got married like 19 years ago. I remember going, it's on you. Hey. It's like, you want kids? My mom was like, I have no grandkids. I'm like, look right there. Now she has 7. So like, none for me. But she has 7. I'm like, now you're fine. Yay.
And now she's telling you to wait, right? Like,
I think she's given up on that one. And that's fine with me. So I've got 7 little scrumptious ones. But that's pretty cool. So now you're just a new relationship. I get it.
Right.
But they're a little relaxed, sort of.
I think they're relaxed. I mean, they're also excited for me. I mean, they know I'm happy. And that's really the main thing. It has been... And for them, they've been really supportive on that. They have let me know they didn't like the person I was dating, though, which is always fun. In the most kindest way possible.
Oh, they're Southern, right? Southern charm.
Absolutely.
She's just a little
bless
cute
her
bug,
heart.
But,
Bless
I don't
her
know
heart.
if you should bring her back for dessert.
Yeah, she's just crazy as a bedbug, bless her heart. You know what I mean? And it's...
Us northern moms do some of that, too. Except we usually go, really? Okay.
As long as you're happy.
That is a northern thing.
Okay.
Just get married, Kyle. Just get married.
Yeah. Mom?
Rush in. We don't care. You rush.
That's pretty good.
Check that off your list.
You know what?
So,
I have a question. 2 things have been on my mind, and I think they're kind of connected. Stupid fights. I want to know about stupid fights. I have a friend who's, when I say, this happened or that happened, she goes, well, that's good. That was a stupid fight. You should have stupid fights and not anything real important. So have you had any stupid fights yet in this new relationship, Kyle?
I wouldn't say any stupid fights at this point. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm relatively...
You're in the honeymoon period.
Yeah, I mean, we're still really enjoying each other's company and that kind of stuff. We haven't any stupid fights. But I will say this, I guess I can see where that makes sense in some ways to have that stupid fight, because you'd rather almost have a play fight on something that's not as momentous as like something you're fighting about, like, like religion or politics or one of those, to help navigate that space, what it looks like to communicate on that level, versus like your first time you have a fight is something super serious and you don't communicate on that well. I could see that being a problem.
Yeah. Okay. What about a married stupid fight?
Yeah, no, we have stupid fights.
We have stupid fights too.
Yeah, I mean,
what's a stupid fight?
At least once a week. It'll be so stupid that the fight ends up becoming what one of us just said a minute ago. Where we're like, no, you just said this, and then it becomes, I'm recording you. Well, I'm recording you.
Yeah.
And then we, compare notes. We're both like Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys. We're getting to the bottom of who said what.
Who said what and how they said it.
The recording thing's interesting.
I've never done a recording thing, but I always am big on, no. I think you said this. I'm sure you said that. No, I said the other thing. And,
She'll be recorded.
It's about either food or who left something somewhere. It's just stupid things. And by the time I tell the story the next day, I'm like, yeah, that really was stupid. But in the moment, it seems monumental.
Yes.
The socks have to be found or folded correctly or just whatever it is, or stuff left on couches, like whatever the pet peeve is.
So I'm kind of curious in that standpoint, because I know from the different people that having the Southern crew and extremely conservative in some ways, and then having people up here who are a little more practical. I look at people who do live together frequently, because let's be honest, rent is a lot of money up here.
Yeah, that's true.
So if you're splitting time, so I'm wondering from your perspective, do you see a mixture of both, and like the differences between living together before and after? Because I've had this debate literally across state lines with people, and just kind of heard it from both sides. I'm just curious.
What do you want to know?
Well, in terms
Who
of
are you
talking about-
debating across state lines?
Well, I have my
Family.
Southern Georgia friends who pay $400 a month for an acre of land, and like, oh no, you should never live together before you get married. I'm like, yeah, but you
Don't shack up.
Right.
Don't
yeah,
shack up, Kyle.
exactly. Oh my God,
You wasn't raised like that.
Oh my
Grandma,
goodness.
I got mom and grandma here.
You
I-
go,
you know
girl.
So I mean, but I'm just curious to see because I've seen the difference of that, and people view it very differently, and I've seen it work and not work on both levels. So
Right.
I don't know, maybe an interview question for me. What you think?
No, yeah.
I have, Bob and I did live together. We had already decided to get married, but we did move in together. And I had no doubt that that's where we were going, so we did. However, that was, a couple of years ago. I got married at 23 the first time, and he passed away in 2012. So, and Bob's wife had died in 2006. But if you go back to, before Bill and I got married, we lived together for a year, and that was a little scandalous.
Back
even,
then, right.
Even for then, and it shouldn't have been. But it was, and I remember my aunt, who happens to be a nun, but she looked at my mother and she said, "It's your fault. It's your fault that they lived together."
Living in
But
sin.
even then, we knew where it was going, so we didn't do it lightly. But I would kind of recommend it. I'm for it.
What about you, Damian?
I was just gonna. I need to do a sidebar. So, Monica, do you have like a Brady Bunch set up? Is that
Yeah, I have 2 sons. He has 3 daughters. So it's
Yeah.
both widowed?
we're both widowed.
Yeah.
Yes,
So it's like a reverse Brady Bunch almost.
almost.
Yeah.
Yes, and
Has it ever come up? Because I mean, that's so
all the time?
It's
We talk
so
about it.
all the
odd.
time.
Not that anybody in today's generation knows what that is or has ever watched the show, but as a kid
Research,
growing
Google
up,
research.
to me, it was always funny how it's like this is really nuts. Like the
No,
way
it
the way
really
this comes
happens.
together, and yet it kind of almost
Yeah.
did.
And we were set up by his daughter and a friend of mine.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yes.
How about that?
So
It's pretty cool.
and after the first date, he made plans. He was like, "Okay, let's make this museum date. Let's do this, and I'm having this." I was like, "Okay." So he
love
was
it.
right there at
Seamless.
the end of the first date, lining up more plans.
Oh, that's great.
Man after my own heart.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
See, she got married young, Kyle. See?
Can you imagine? I got
See?
married at 20. I was a month shy of 24, but we started dating when I was 21.
Oh, wow.
And he knew right away. He took a few months to convince me, but he was like, "No, I knew.
Wow.
I knew when I talked to you. That was
That's
it."
an old maid in Georgia.
21. You betcha. You
Oh,
betcha.
my mother was trying to figure out what the male equivalent was of an old maid, and I'm not sure if there is one exactly. Is it a
Yeah, there's no spinster word for
spinster?
men.
Think
No,
of
of course
Spitz.
not, because it's about men, and I'm sorry. This is because, in fact, this was a stupid fight that. I don't like the word widow.
Yeah.
It's dormant. It implies no activity to me. It's widow. You sit there. A man who's lost his spouse is a widower, and the ER makes it active to me, and acceptable almost. And it was it's a big thing for me. I hate that word.
Yeah.
Widow. I'm a widow. It's awful.
Is there a word that you would use is there a substitute word?
Not to describe myself. I will say I lost my husband. I say he died, but I'm still me. So I don't label myself that way. Never did.
Nice.
Okay.
But so again, going back to spinster, there's no. You're called a bachelor. You're called
Right, that's
a man
true.
about town. Like
Yeah,
think
that's
of the
true.
old sayings about it.
Distinguished gentlemen.
Distinguished gentleman. Yeah.
Let's try that one on, Missy.
Maybe I should come up with a female version of that. I don't know.
I'm
see.
first in line.
For the early bird special.
Oh, you peaked.
Well, I am taking applications, so we'll see. I don't know. Not from married men, but we're taking applications. So that's
yeah,
pretty
that's my
awesome.
comment on that. Men always get a more active word than women do.
This equality disparaging just keeps going on.
It does.
We'll have to end it.
It
We'll
does.
have to end it. Well, I was doing some research for prepping for you gentlemen to come, and I found an article online that talks about why men get married and why women get married, and I think it was in Reuters. And not saying that any of this is true, but this is what the gentleman said. I was looking for articles by men, and he said, well, women get married to settle down, family, for love, and men, well, his comment was kind of, men get married because of the convenience, financial, sexually wise. But I put that aside because I really didn't buy that, but I'm glad you gentlemen are here for that. But like, what did you make you want to, I mean, compatibility, I get that, but what did make you, Damian, want to marry your wife? Like, what will bring a man to that point? And I know it varies somewhat. I get that. Where they're like, no, I want to marry this woman, because you could date for eternally, especially in the city. Eternally. You can always date.
That's a good question. First of all, Reuters doesn't know what they're talking about. Right? So you shouldn't. That's silly. I think that there's a myriad of reasons, and it's never just one or two reasons for anybody to make a decision.
Right.
There's always so many things. I think it's a cop out to say, well, it's financially, and you don't buy the cow instead of whatever the milk reference is with the cow. It's completely outdated.
I buy the cow and you can get the milk free.
Yeah, you get the milk at home.
My mother used to say that all the
Okay,
time.
thank you. So it's not just a it's not just a me thing. So in any case, it's always a combination of things. For me, it was finally kind of growing up, and I've been a very, very late bloomer from birth. Just even but my maturity level now, in case you haven't realized, is borderline. Let's call security. So, and that's fine, and that's good. But as far as finally growing up, my father passed away in 2010, and the last conversation I had with him is when it kind of like really kicked in. And sure enough, 2 months later, I proposed to my wife. And I think, unfortunately, sometimes there are things that happen in your life that just push you in a direction. It's not because it's convenient or because of the financial or this. Things just happen in life that just pull you or push you in a certain direction.
Right.
And that's my story.
Wow. Kyle, I know you're not married yet, but I mean, you have friends that are married and you have single friends. Like, what do you guys ever talk about stuff like that? Like, women, we do talk, especially single women, like, oh, I wonder if he'll marry me or blah, blah, blah. All these conversations go on. Like, do single men actually talk about that? And what is it like? Is it a 2-minute, yeah, I'd marry her, now I wouldn't marry her, blah, blah, or is it like, well, what is it?
It depends on the friends. I mean, I have some that we have that conversation, we'll sit down and really do it. And other ones, while we've been friends for a really long time, that mature conversation, unless you really stage it up, most of the time we talk about sports or whatever and don't really kind of dig into it. But there have been times, absolutely, you'll dig into that. And really, I mean, the way we always reference is like, is she the one? We don't think about it any other way. I mean, and anybody who says it's a convenience thing, I think that's probably the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard ever. I'm not sure what's convenient about that, but I think it's something you want to do.
Preach.
Yeah. Very good point.
I mean, I've seen a lot of divorce in my life, so like, I just can't see what's convenient necessarily about. I mean, that's just a weird way to label it. Something that's really beautiful, and then you label it as a convenience thing. I mean, no, what's convenient is for me to go downstairs and get to do the mobile app on Starbucks to get my coffee, not to spend the rest of my life with somebody. That's not a convenience thing. That's something you do. It's a beautiful thing, and I believe in it strongly. It's just, I'm not sure I got on my little tirade there, but
no, I'm glad you did.
Yeah, me too.
Glad you did.
But like, are these? I imagine like men don't have, like women. We will go on in detail about things. We're sharers. We're natural sharers. That's how I'm gonna phrase it. But for men, like we said, you do have those conversations once in a while. I imagine, is it a short conversation? Just is she's the one? It's not like, oh, her hair is this and she does this and she's smart and she's like how. What is that conversation like?
It's much shorter than that. Yeah, I mean, it's is she the one? Yeah, I mean, we'll be like, yes, she is. I think she is. And it's like, well, she's great for you. I'm like, you're happy. Or like, hey, buddy, we should rethink this maybe. Or, for your
somebody
close friends.
goes, really?
Yeah, somebody goes, exactly.
The mom is
as long
over
as
here.
you're happy.
Really?
Okay.
Yeah. So that's really the gist of the conversation. No one really asks. I mean, I've never asked why.
Right.
That's what you feel. Okay, that's fine. I mean, but we're not really good about talking about our emotions too much, I don't think. But
there's another question and this is just related to men. What is the one thing, I want to ask both you gentlemen, what is the one thing that you wish all women knew about men? And you can answer for men in general, but what do you wish women knew about men?
Do we have any secrets? Is there anything not on the table, Kyle? Because I mean, I feel like women know men much better than the other way around. Are we not on that page? Or
Just curious if there was something like, I've asked women that before, and they'll be, this is of course, we're very expressive of answers. I just want to know if there's something that you wish that women really got about men.
I mean,
in
if you really want to cut into it, it would be nice if women. And this is such an in general statement, so this can't apply to everyone.
To you. Don't stop Damian on the street with this translation.
That men are a little bit more complex than I think that they realize. I think men tend to think that women, when they're together, laugh their butts off about how stupid men are, or how men are, how predictable men are. I just feel like that goes on, and maybe it's warranted. I mean, I'm not saying it's not correct. And if the guys aren't there, their feelings aren't getting hurt because you're just talking amongst yourselves. Mm-hmm. But to me, I think, hey, I wish you guys thought, would maybe take into account that maybe we're a little more complex than that. I don't know.
I like that answer.
Yeah.
I really like that answer a lot, and I agree with it. I think, and I do think men are complicated and more complicated than they let on. And that's one of the things that can frustrate me sometimes, trying to keep asking the questions until you tell me what you think or how you feel. I mean, the specific in your life, like if I'm talking to Bob and I have to ask 25 questions, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to keep asking questions until you actually tell me.
And what
because that's important. So, and I think that goes to communication styles, which is the other thing that's always on my mind, the vast space between what comes out of someone's mouth and what goes into their ears. And how those stupid fights then start because you say something in some way and they hear it in another way.
Right.
And in reverse. So what I want to find is the ground between. So what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, Kyle.
Oh man! That was a lot. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding the question in its whole.
There's two questions.
There's two questions.
You can start with
what's your communication style? Would you say?
I'm a really bad texter.
Me too. Yeah, I think texting is evil.
Little disclosures. Girlfriend's here. I saw her on the monitor, just not like yes. So.
I am the worst about that. And it's bad because sorry, this is a quick aside, but I just get caught up in work, and my phone's always on vibrate, so that's part of it. So like I'm just working on stuff, and I'm like, oh man, it's lunchtime. I should probably look up for my laptop or whatever else. I'm like, oh, look at that, Jess texted me. Let me do this really quickly. So, yeah, I'm sorry about that. So the secrets thing, I'll address that quickly, and I can speak more from, I guess, when I was dating, and
yeah, please do.
I would agree. I think we are a little more complex than people give us a little more credit for. We're nervous too. I mean, really, walking in there, we get nervous. We're it's not an easy thing to go out and ask somebody out or do whatever, even with the apps, and you can hide behind your screen or whatever it is. But it's still you're still putting yourself out there, especially when you show up the first time and those kind of things. So guys are nervous too. So do that as you want, and I think it's pretty much it. We're nervous.
Is that something you want them to know? Like, guys are nervous. Even if they're playing cool or they're like, oh. And I think what I got from you with the texting, too, is I have some single friends who are like, oh, they didn't text me. What does that mean? We hear a lot of that. What does that mean? It's like,
oh, yeah, what is that?
What does this mean?
I've heard that,
does that mean?
too. And there's a time frame. Like, you're not supposed to answer unless they text you 3 times or something like that.
Yeah, that's a lot of rules.
That's a lot of rules.
I got from you that it's just not personal, Kyle. Like, sometimes it's not. I mean, sometimes it is. You have different kinds of men, different kinds of women. That's just how it is. But it's just not personal. Sometimes you're just taking care of business and you're focused on what you're doing, and the point is you do get back to them, and you let them know.
That's been a discussion for you. I mean, you guys ever see the movie Swingers, Vince Vaughn?
Yes,
and the whole joke there was, how many days do you wait to call a girl when you meet her? You wait 6 days. Do you wait 3 days? What's money? Is it money to wait 5 days, or is it money to wait 7 days before you call? So I mean, the whole follow up, even though it's now gone into the 21st century, I think it's always been there.
Yeah.
Medieval times, it's
Make it
Helga
so-
didn't scratch a Sanskrit note on the cave.
Maketh her wait, so that she may long for you.
Well, I don't think
Cheerio.
relationships really fundamentally have changed ever.
Yeah.
People think they reinvent it every generation.
True.
Like, I've talked to my mother about things, and I'm like, oh yeah, it sounds the same. My sons tell me things, and I'm like, yeah, you didn't invent that.
Love is love is love.
I remember reading. All right, it's kind of a heavy, but it was the Adams women. It was the history of the Adams women. Louisa.
May Alcott?
No, Abigail Adams and Louisa Adams, John Quincy Adams' wife, and John Adams' wife. But they talk about the relationships, and I was reading this, thinking, oh my God, it sounds exactly right.
Well, you talking about the letters that they would write to each other?
Yes.
Yeah, those are insane.
Those are
crazy.
Those are
I wanna
insane
read
and crazy
that.
and very current.
Right.
I read this stuff. I was like, wow, he left. She had to get out of Russia. The wolves were chasing the sled, and then he got mad because she wore blush, and they had a fight about it. I was like, stupid fights. There it is again.
I never could figure those out because they would always be like letters where one of them would go across the Atlantic Ocean to France or something, and yet they'd write them every day. Well, how are those letters getting to America if you're on a boat for 3 months? Like, I never understood that dynamic.
that's
but
a good one.
somehow,
I think they mailed
somehow it
the
made it work.
packet when they got.
But then another
Oh, no,
3
no, no,
months
no.
to
That's a lot of
America.
boats.
I think the
300
ships,
boats.
would
Pass,
pass,
and then they exchanged
ships
the mail.
passing in the night.
That's
Oh.
interesting.
Actually, but I want to go back a few steps in this conversation because there was something that you said, Damian, that was interesting. And I was recently listening to a radio show where they touched on this, where they talked about women's style of communication versus men. And they literally played out, I want to say it was Steve Harvey, but I don't remember what it was. They played out this whole conversation about a guy coming home and a woman saying, you want to talk to me? And the guy's like, I talked all day. I don't want to talk. So she's like, oh, so you don't want to talk to me? And he's like, well, I just kind of want some time to myself and I've been talking all day. So you can talk to your friends at work, but you can't talk to me. So I say all that to say, as Monica was talking about talking to Bob or sharing about getting him to open up and you were talking about different styles of communication. Like, what is the best way for a woman to... We're expressive. We like to express our feelings. That's a release for us, if I may say so. It's a release for us to be able to express our feelings, what happened all day. What is the best way to communicate then with your man or a man if you're more complex? Like, what's the best thing to do at that point? If a woman wants to get, what's going on with you and really cares about it, and knowing that we like to share naturally, and maybe that's not a man's style. What's the best way to go about that to get him to share or get him to express that he's not ready to share? Like, how do we, because it means a lot to us to connect with our men. We're connectors verbally, I know men connect physically, and not that women don't either, but what's the best way to get our guys to open up or share? And is it best to just sit back? Like, what is your take on it, both of you?
I don't have an answer for you, but let's unpack this. Okay, so first of all, this was something you heard Steve Harvey talking about on the radio?
I'm not sure who, but I recently,
I was
literally
going to
like
say,
2 days ago.
this is a guy who couldn't say the words Miss Columbia on a piece of paper when he was handed to it. So I don't know if it's the ideal...
No, it wasn't
model.
about him. I'm saying it was on his show. Somebody was reenacting a fight between a couple. Like they were just, it was like a little comedy spurt where they were like, this is how women talk, this is how men talk. And literally it went on to where they finally, the guy was like, all right, I'm ready to talk to you now. And she's like, nope, you couldn't talk to me when you came in the door. So I'm saying that to say that you were talking about the complexity and she's talking about getting, asking 20 questions to find out what's on his mind.
Well, yeah, but that's very individual. I think every couple has to develop the communication, and I think
Exactly.
we're talking about generalizations, and I was too in that space between, what's said and what's heard. So how do you come to terms to that in a relationship, in a specific relationship, and does that generalize?
Well, that's what I'm saying, like the styles of communication between men and women. Like, how do we bridge that gap where both parties are somewhat satisfied in the sense that the woman is able to get what she feels she needs or connect with her guy, and the guy is able to communicate in his style in his own way.
Right.
If that makes any sense.
It does, and I think it's unfair. It's an unfair task to put on a woman's shoulders to have to figure out a way to communicate with someone when it comes very naturally to her. I'm an exception to the rule of when you see guys that are the strong, silent type or whatever, I will not shut up. So the communication, I'm very open with just talking. I don't really like doing the silent. I have gone times where I've done that, but it's easy to to get me to open up. I think that that's an important thing that you brought up, Monica. It's a hurdle that a relationship has to clear really before you can say that you are in a solid relationship. That's sort of an early hurdle. If you're deep into it and you have this issue, it doesn't sound very good. My advice would be for women to find, and again, it's unfair that you have to do this, but in my opinion, you want to find things that you already know that your man likes to talk about: sports items, news, music, items or topics that you already know he's comfortable talking about, and then do your thing, women, and segue into what it is that you really want to talk about. That this is when you brag with your girlfriends, you know that you control. Well, this is when you get to control. This is how you have to do it. And it's unfortunate that there's this extra step. But honestly, that might be the best way to be able to start to crack that ice.
Awesome. Thank you, Kyle.
So you're unfortunately in the aspect that I'm the same as Damian in that aspect. The only time I'm probably not talking is if I'm asleep. So I talk a little too much, and it's generally not a problem. But I think that's really good advice there. I mean, we do the same thing with our friends, right? Especially the ones we haven't seen in a while. Is that we start talking about something that we have in common, and next thing you know, you're talking about what's new, and that's just kind of the same technique. And I think that's a really good insight to have.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, it is, and treating your partner as your best friend.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about this early on. Why are there different expectations for your relationship partner than there are when you're talking to your best friend? And there shouldn't be.
I think that goes back to the point, sorry to come back around with talking about giving up your friends for, when you get married, and I think that's a big point of it. I think it's not necessarily, I think it's a priority, and it's also a choice. Like, I'm with my best friend all the time versus, yes, you still have your friend, your male friends and those kind of things, but it's a different thing. You want to versus like, oh, I have to sacrifice. That's not the way it's viewed.
That's
it's a perception.
Right. And I will say there are times when I shut up and Bob has to drag things out of me, and I do, no, it's fine. The dreaded, no, I'm fine. Oh. It's fine.
That's
the worst four-letter word ever.
Isn't that the worst word?
It's not fine, yeah.
That's the code word.
Yeah.
I'm like that too. If I'm silent, there's a problem. Because I'm like you, Damian. I'm like, share with the world. And then it's like,
take me home.
Everybody's like, everybody's like, what's going on? She's not talking. And I'm like, well, if I'm shut down, there's probably an issue. But it passes. It passes. It fades. And eventually can open up and talk about what it is. And sometimes I think it's healthy to shut it down, just to process what seems urgent or you seem really passionate in the moment about, like, I have to be right, or I know this, or this is an injustice. Sometimes when you stop and reflect in that shutdown period, you can be like, okay, it's not really that big of a deal. It's not worth, what's that quote you said about the fights that you pick?
You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to.
Exactly.
So something I'm still learning. And there was something else I was going to say about, kind of a code word, like instead of going, fine, I need a little time to process. Right. I need a little time to think about this. I don't want to say anything that I'm going to regret, and therefore I'm going to formulate and I'm going to be fair. Yeah. And I think that's one of the biggest things in relationships, fairness and trust, and never thinking it's 50-50. It's 50-50 sometimes. It's 100, 0, 90, 10. I mean, it runs the gamut. It's ever fluctuating. So,
well said. Awesome.
So, we're about out of time. Yeah. Believe it or not. And thank you both for this conversation and your perspectives on things. I hope you had a good time.
I had a great time.
I had a great time. Yeah, absolutely. It's fine.
I hope your listeners got something out of this.
I think they did.
I hope so.
I think they did.
Well, guys, look us up on Facebook, Single Ladies Married Women Podcast. We're on Instagram. We will take pictures and put them up with the gentleman here. And if you have any comments, any feedback, tell us about how you handle your relationships and your communication styles. We greatly appreciate it. And that's it.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Damian. Thank you, Kyle. Yes. Thank you, Breece.
Thank you, Jess.
Thank you, Lewis.
All right. We'll talk to you guys next time on Single Ladies
Married Women. Bye-bye.